Get busy living or get busy dying. That line from a wrongfully convicted banker became one of the most quoted moments in cinema history. And somehow, a movie about 2 decades in prison turned into the most beloved film of all time. Directed by Frank Darabont and released by Columbia Pictures in 1994, The Shawshank Redemption follows Andy Dufresne, a banker sentenced to life in prison for murders he didn't commit. Tim Robbins plays Andy with quiet intensity. Morgan Freeman is Red, the lifer who narrates the story and becomes Andy's closest friend. Bob Gunton is the corrupt Warden Norton, and together they create a tale about hope, friendship, and patient revenge that critics loved and audiences completely ignored. What started as a Stephen King novella about institutional survival turned into a box office disaster that somehow became the #1 rated movie on IMDb, beating The Godfather, beating Citizen Kane, beating everything. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about The Shawshank Redemption. Stick around for number 1, because the movie you think you know better than any other film actually bombed so hard it nearly ended Frank Darabont's directing career before it started, and the story of how it went from flop to legend is wilder than Andy's escape plan. Now, before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for deep dives into the movies we grew up on. All right, grab your rock hammer and let's dig into Shawshank, starting with number 15. 15. Freeman threw for 9 hours straight. Morgan Freeman spent 9 hours throwing a baseball and showed up the next day with his arm in a sling. The scene where Andy and Red meet for the first time in the prison yard looks simple on screen. Red's playing catch with other inmates. Andy walks over and asks about getting a rock hammer. They talk. Red keeps throwing. The whole thing takes maybe 3 minutes of screen time. Director Frank Darabont filmed it for 9 hours straight. He wanted multiple takes from every angle, different lighting, different timing, perfect coverage. And the entire time, Freeman kept throwing that baseball, back and forth, hour after hour. Freeman later downplayed it in interviews. It's just a conversation that takes place when a few of the prisoners are throwing a baseball around in the prison yard. Nothing to it, right? He described it as easy work. So, you're throwing and catching a baseball hour after hour. Easy. His body disagreed. The next morning, Freeman arrived on set with his left arm in a sling. 9 hours of repetitive throwing motion had destroyed the muscles and tendons. He never complained during filming, never asked for a break, just kept throwing until Darabont was satisfied. Here's the beautiful irony. Red is a character defined by patient endurance, a man who survives 40 years in prison by accepting his reality without complaint. And Freeman played him by literally enduring physical pain without saying a word. Method acting taken to an extreme nobody asked for. Sometimes great performances require great suffering. Freeman just didn't realize the suffering would come from playing catch. 14. Rob Reiner offered $3 million. Frank Darabont owned the rights to make The Shawshank Redemption, and Rob Reiner offered him $3 million to give them up. Reiner had already directed Stand By Me, another Stephen King adaptation that became a critical and commercial success. He wanted Shawshank. He loved the script. And he came to Darabont with a plan. Step aside, take the money, and let Reiner direct it with Tom Cruise as Andy and Harrison Ford as Red. $3 million. For a first-time director who'd never made a feature film, that's life-changing money. Generational wealth. Financial security forever. Darabont said no. He'd spent years trying to get this movie made. He'd written the script specifically to direct it himself. He wasn't going to hand it over to someone else, even if that someone was Rob Reiner with a track record of King adaptations. Castle Rock Entertainment, the studio backing the project, sweetened the deal. They told Darabont that if he let Reiner direct Shawshank, they'd finance any other movie Darabont wanted to make, any project, any budget. Just step aside from this one. Darabont still said no. Here's the cosmic justice. Darabont gambling on himself made his career. The Shawshank Redemption became his calling card. It led to The Green Mile, The Mist, creating The Walking Dead. Everything. If he'd taken that $3 million, he'd be financially comfortable and professionally unknown. Instead, he's the guy who directed the greatest movie of all time according to IMDb. 13. Stephen King sold the rights for $5,000. Stephen King sold Frank Darabont the film rights to Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption for $5,000. Then, he never cashed the check. Back in 1987, Darabont had adapted another King short story, The Woman in the Room, into a well-received short film. King was impressed, so when Darabont asked for the rights to Shawshank, King agreed to sell them for a token amount, $5,000. Darabont sent the check. King received it. And then King stuck it in a drawer and forgot about it. Years later, after The Shawshank Redemption premiered to critical acclaim, and King realized Darabont had made something special, King pulled out that uncashed check. He had it framed, and he mailed it back to Darabont with a note attached. The note read, "In case you ever need bail money, love, Steve." King essentially gave Darabont the film rights for free. A gesture of support from one artist to another. No lawyers, no negotiations, no profit participation. Just trust that Darabont would do something worthwhile with the story. And Darabont did. He made a movie that's now ranked higher than any other King adaptation. Higher than The Shining, higher than The Green Mile, higher than Stand By Me. Here's the irony. King never liked the title The Shawshank Redemption. He thought it was too confusing, too hard to remember. He later blamed it for the movie's box office failure. But that terrible title attached to that uncashed check became the name of the most beloved movie ever made. 12. He set at extreme tension. Morgan Freeman described the Shawshank production as very strange, with moments of extreme tension on the set, between the director and actors, between everybody. While Tim Robbins praised Darabont and called the experience life-changing, Freeman had a completely different memory. In interviews, he was candid about the atmosphere behind the scenes. "It was a strange production," Freeman said. "There were moments of extreme tension on the set, between the director and actors, between everybody. Just this personality stuff between different groups. It was very strange. The tension came from multiple sources. Darabont was a first-time feature director working with established actors. He demanded endless takes. The shooting days stretched to 18 hours. The summer heat in Ohio was brutal, and everyone knew they were making something special, which only increased the pressure. Freeman's 9-hour baseball marathon wasn't the only grueling experience. The entire production operated at that intensity level. Darabont's perfectionism created an environment where nothing was ever quite good enough on the first take. Or the 10th. Different groups formed on set. Different personalities clashed. The kind of friction that happens when talented people spend months together under stressful conditions. Here's the irony. All that tension, all that friction, all those 18-hour days created performances so powerful they transcended misery. The actors' exhaustion reads as prison weariness. Their frustration feels like institutional oppression. Freeman later admitted the finished film was his favorite of his own work, but getting there was hell. 11. Sidney Poitier said no. Sidney Poitier turned down the role of Red because he thought portraying a convicted murderer didn't help the image of black men in Hollywood. Before Morgan Freeman was cast, producers approached one of the most respected black actors in cinema history. Poitier had broken barriers, won an Oscar, and built a career playing dignified, intelligent characters who challenged racial stereotypes. And they wanted him to play a lifer in prison who smuggles contraband and admits to deserving his sentence for committing murder. Poitier said no. According to sources, he felt that playing another convicted criminal wouldn't advance the representation of black men in film. He'd spent his career fighting against those exact stereotypes. Why go backward? It's a completely understandable decision. Poitier wasn't wrong. Hollywood had a long history of casting black actors primarily as criminals, servants, or victims. Playing Red would mean wearing prison clothes and admitting to violent crime on screen. So, he walked away. And the role went to Freeman. Here's the twist. Freeman took that convicted murderer role and turned it into one of the most beloved characters in cinema. Red isn't defined by his crime. He's defined by his wisdom, his friendship, his quiet strength. The role that Poitier thought would perpetuate stereotypes became a character who transcended them. Red is nobody's stereotype. He's just Red. 10. The prison is now a tourist trap. The Ohio State Reformatory was supposed to be torn down after filming, Instead, it became a tourist attraction that earned $16 million a year. The production filmed at an actual defunct prison in Mansfield, Ohio. The building was scheduled for demolition. Darabont got permission to use it before the wrecking crews showed up. Once filming wrapped, the plan was to destroy it completely. But then, the Shawshank Redemption became a cultural phenomenon, and people started showing up to see where it was filmed. In 2000, a group of film enthusiasts called the Mansfield Reformatory Preservation Society bought the building from the state of Ohio for $1. $1. They took on the responsibility of maintaining it as a historical landmark. Today, the prison runs tours, hosts events, and attracts thousands of visitors annually. According to a 2019 report, the attraction generates approximately $16 million in annual revenue. The surrounding area has built an entire tourism industry around the film. Local businesses sell Shawshanwiches. They make bundt cakes shaped like the prison. The city operates something called the Shawshank Trail, 15 marked stops around filming locations across Mansfield and nearby towns. In 2018, that trail earned $16.9 million in revenue. Here's the cosmic irony. The Shawshank Redemption made $16 million during its initial theatrical run and was considered a massive flop. 30 years later, the prison location makes $16 million every single year from tourism. The movie bombed at the box office but became the box office. A building scheduled for demolition is now a permanent monument. Sometimes failure plants seeds for success nobody could predict. 9. The narration was almost cut. Studio executives wanted to remove Morgan Freeman's narration entirely. They thought it made the movie feel like a book instead of a film. When Darabont submitted his first cut, Castle Rock Entertainment had notes. The biggest one: lose the voiceover, too much narration, too literary. Movies should show, not tell. Executives argued that Freeman's constant commentary pulled viewers out of the story. They wanted more visual storytelling, less explanation. The narration felt like a crutch. Darabont refused. He'd written the narration into the script from the beginning. It wasn't an afterthought or a fix for unclear plotting. It was the voice of the story. Red's perspective was the lens through which the audience experiences Shawshank. The studio pushed back. They'd seen plenty of movies ruined by excessive voiceover. Blade Runner had famously been damaged by studio-mandated narration. Why make that same mistake? But Darabont held firm. He showed them test screening responses. Audiences loved Freeman's voice. The narration didn't distance them from the story, it drew them in. Eventually, the studio relented. The narration stayed. Here's the irony. Freeman's voiceover became the most iconic aspect of the Shawshank Redemption. His voice is so integral to the film that imagining it without narration feels impossible. The thing executives wanted to cut became the thing that defined it. And it launched Freeman's career as Hollywood's most sought-after narrator. Every nature documentary, every commercial, every voiceover project since then stems from Shawshank. The element they wanted to remove became his signature. 8. Charlie Sheen offered to work for free. Charlie Sheen wanted to play Red so desperately, he offered to work for minimum wage and perform a 30-minute one-man audition just to prove he understood the character. This was 1993. Sheen was a legitimate movie star coming off Platoon, Wall Street, Young Guns, and Major League. He had box office power. He could demand serious money, and he was willing to throw all of it away for a role in a prison drama that nobody thought would make money. Sheen called Castle Rock Entertainment directly, told them he'd work for scale, the minimum union wage. No star salary, no profit participation, just the chance to play Red. Then he offered to perform a 30-minute showcase, a full one-man show demonstrating how he would interpret the character. He'd do all the work himself, prove he understood Red's voice, his rhythm, his wisdom. Castle Rock said no. They already had Morgan Freeman, but think about what Sheen saw that most of Hollywood missed. He read that script and recognized it could be something special. He understood the material deeply enough to know playing Red would be worth more than any paycheck. And he was completely right about the quality. He just wasn't right for the role. Here's the twist. Sheen offered to work for free to be in the greatest movie of all time and got rejected. Meanwhile, actors who said yes to bigger paychecks in 1994 made forgettable films nobody remembers. 7. Clint Eastwood turned down Red. Morgan Freeman wasn't the first choice for Red. Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, and Gene Hackman all turned it down. In Stephen King's original novella, Red is a middle-aged white Irishman with graying red hair, hence the nickname Red. When Castle Rock Entertainment started casting, they looked for actors who matched that description. Clint Eastwood said no. Harrison Ford passed. Paul Newman wasn't interested. Robert Redford declined. Gene Hackman turned it down. Robert Duvall said no thanks. Every major white actor of the right age either didn't want to play a convicted criminal or didn't believe in the project enough to commit. Then Frank Darabont had a different idea. What if Red wasn't white? Morgan Freeman read the script and called his agent immediately. It doesn't matter which part it is, I want to be in it. He didn't care about playing the lead. He just wanted to be in the movie. When they offered him Red, Freeman was stunned. And I thought, wow, I control the movie. I was flabbergasted by that. The film even acknowledges the race change. When Andy asks Red why they call him that, Red replies with perfect deadpan, maybe because I'm Irish. Here's the cosmic justice. Every actor who turned down Red missed the chance to narrate the greatest movie of all time. Freeman took a role written for someone else and made it so definitive that people forget Red was ever supposed to be white. 6. They hid Stephen King's name. The studio deliberately avoided using Stephen King's name in the marketing because they didn't want audiences thinking it was a horror movie. By 1994, Stephen King meant one thing to most moviegoers: scary. Carrie, The Shining, Pet Sematary, Misery. Even his non-horror adaptations like Stand By Me were overshadowed by his reputation as the master of terror. Castle Rock Entertainment knew The Shawshank Redemption wasn't a horror film. No monsters, no supernatural elements, no scares. Just a prison drama about hope and friendship. But they worried that slapping "From Stephen King" on the poster would send the wrong message. Audiences would show up expecting something terrifying and leave confused or disappointed. So they buried it. The marketing focused on the actors, the story, the emotion. King's name appeared in the credits, but it wasn't a selling point. They even shortened the original novella title from Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption to just The Shawshank Redemption, partially to distance it from King's brand. It didn't help. The movie still bombed. Here's the irony. Hiding King's name might have actually hurt the film. His fans would have shown up opening weekend. They would have told their friends. Word of mouth from the King fanbase could have saved it from total disaster. Instead, the studio tried to have it both ways. Use King's story. Don't use King's name. And it failed anyway. 5. The rooftop tar scene was brutal. The rooftop tarring scene, filmed on a 110-degree summer day using real tar that solidified between takes and made the mops feel like they weighed 200 pounds. It's one of the movie's most important sequences. Andy offers to help the guard captain with his taxes in exchange for beer for the workers tarring the roof. It establishes Andy's value to the prison staff and gives the inmates a brief moment of freedom. On screen, it looks like guys spreading tar on a roof. Simple manual labor. Behind the scenes, it was torture. They filmed during the summer, on an actual rooftop in Ohio. The temperature hit 110 degrees. The production used real tar because fake tar wouldn't look right on camera. Real tar solidifies when it cools. Between takes, while the crew reset cameras and adjusted lighting, the tar would harden. The actors would try to move their mops and discover they'd basically turned into tar-covered bricks. Swinging those mops felt like swinging 200-pound weights, over and over, in 110-degree heat, for hours. The actors were genuinely exhausted and miserable. That weariness you see on screen isn't acting. That's real physical suffering. And it makes the beer moment at the end of the scene land even harder. When the inmates sit on that roof drinking cold beer like free men, they earned it. The actors playing them actually earned it too. Here's the Shawshank philosophy in action. Sometimes you have to endure real hardship to create authentic moments. 4. The title destroyed the box office. People couldn't remember the title. Tim Robbins said audiences called it Shimmy Shimmy Shake, Shankshaw, and Scrimshaw Reduction. When The Shawshank Redemption bombed at the box office, everyone had theories. Too much competition from Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump. No female characters. Prison movies don't sell. Dark subject matter. But Robbins had a simpler explanation. Nobody could remember what the hell the movie was called. He told Entertainment Weekly that, for years after the film came out, people would approach him to praise the movie, but they'd struggle with the title. Shimmy Shimmy Shake, Shankshaw, Scrimshaw Reduction. They knew they loved it, they just couldn't communicate what it was. Stephen King agreed. He admitted he'd never liked the title of his original novella, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. And when Darabont shortened it to just The Shawshank Redemption, King thought that was worse. It was not, at first, much of a success at the box office, King wrote. Part of the reason may have been the title, which conveyed no information and called up no image in the potential moviegoer's mind. Unfortunately, nobody could think of a better one, and that included me. So the greatest movie of all time almost failed because nobody could remember its name. People loved it. They wanted to tell their friends. But they couldn't complete the sentence, "You should see." Here's the irony. Today, Shawshank is so iconic it barely needs the full title. Everyone knows what you mean when you say Shawshank. 3. It made $16 million against $25 million budget. The Shawshank Redemption cost $25 million to make and earned $16 million during its initial theatrical run. A complete box office disaster. When the film went wide in mid-October 1994, it earned $2.4 million from nearly 1,000 theaters. It finished at number 13 for the weekend box office. 13th, behind Exit to Eden, a forgettable sex comedy that nobody remembers. The film stayed in theaters for about 10 weeks and finished with approximately $16 million total. Against a $25 million production budget, not counting marketing costs or theater cuts, that's a catastrophic loss. Columbia Pictures had expected modest success. Critical acclaim suggested audiences would show up. Early test screenings had been overwhelmingly positive. Everything pointed to at least breaking even. Instead, the movie died. Theaters pulled it. The studio wrote it off as a failure. Producer Liz Glotzer later claimed that a negative review from the Los Angeles Times pushed crowds away and destroyed their box office hopes. Kenneth Turan's mixed review supposedly convinced people to skip it, but realistically, it was a perfect storm. Confusing title, prison setting, heavy subject matter, brutal competition, and zero-star power-pulling general audiences. Here's the twist. That $16 million disaster became the foundation for a cultural phenomenon. The Oscar nominations led to a theatrical re-release. Home video turned it into the most rented film of 1995. Cable TV made it unavoidable. And that prison in Mansfield, Ohio. It now generates $16 million per year from tourism. The movie lost $16 million. The location makes $16 million annually, full circle. 2. It lost all 7 Oscars. The Shawshank Redemption was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and lost every single one to Forrest Gump. Best Picture, lost to Forrest Gump. Best Actor, Morgan Freeman, lost to Tom Hanks for Forrest Gump. Best Adapted, Screenplay, lost to Forrest Gump. Best Cinematography, lost to Legends of the Fall. Best Film Editing, lost to Forrest Gump. Best Original Score, lost to The Lion King. Best Sound, lost to Speed. 7 nominations, 0 wins, completely shut out. And 5 of those 7 losses went to Forrest Gump, a movie about a simple man stumbling through history that came out the exact same year and became a cultural phenomenon while Shawshank bombed in theaters. Frank Darabont had made what he believed was his masterpiece. Critics agreed. Audiences who actually saw it loved it. And the Academy recognized it with 7 nominations, including the big one, Best Picture. Then on Oscar night, Forrest Gump swept. Tom Hanks beat Morgan Freeman. The Gump screenplay beat Darabont's screenplay. The Gump editing beat Shawshank's editing. It was a complete rejection. Here's the cosmic justice. Today, The Shawshank Redemption ranks number 1 on IMDb's top 250. Forrest Gump ranks number 11. Shawshank is considered by millions of film fans to be the greatest movie ever made. Forrest Gump is considered a very good movie that won a lot of Oscars. The Academy picked the winner. History picked Shawshank. 1. It bombed, then became number 1 all time. The Shawshank Redemption went from box office disaster to the #1 rated film of all time on IMDb, above The Godfather, above everything. After bombing in theaters and losing every Oscar, the movie should have disappeared. That's what happens to expensive failures. They vanish. But Warner Brothers made a strange decision. They distributed 320,000 VHS rental copies in 1995. For a movie that had just flopped, that seemed insane. Massive overproduction. It became the #1 video rental of 1995. People who'd skipped it in theaters discovered it at home. They told their friends. Those friends rented it. Word of mouth exploded. Then TNT started airing it regularly as part of their New Classics programming in 1997. Suddenly, it was on cable constantly. You couldn't avoid it. If you flipped through channels, you'd find it. And you'd watch. You'd always watch. Tim Robbins later explained why he thought it worked better at home. The immediate reaction at that time wasn't as important as whether the film would have life in video and on cable. He was right. The film found its audience through repetition and availability, through people stumbling across it and being unable to turn it off. Today it sits at #1 on IMDb's Top 250 list. It's been there since 2008, above The Godfather, above Schindler's List, above The Dark Knight, above everything. The movie that lost $9 million and won 0 Oscars became the most beloved film in history. Sometimes the biggest failures plant seeds for the greatest successes. You just have to be patient enough to let them grow. And there you have it. 15 weird and wild facts about the Shawshank Redemption. Which facts surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments and share this with a friend who quotes, "Get busy living or get busy dying," like it's their life philosophy. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about films that shouldn't have worked, but became legends anyway. Thank you for watching. Until next time.